Dudes. Well, I think someone might have removed themselves or said no to the recording. Hopefully, they'll be able to join if that was the case. But with that,
It
right?
says it's recording now.
Yes, but I think somebody might have got
Okay.
kicked off. So we'll find out
Okay.
a little bit later. But
Okay.
welcome, everybody. Miss Baisley and Mrs. Holtzman's classes. We are lucky to have Mr. Pinkney, an author, an illustrator, a community member. He's got children, grandchildren, a great-grandchild, and we are about to learn with him. So they are all yours, Mr. Pinkney.
Well, what we're going to start with is Mr. Cohen is going to run through some images that I created, and I'll sort of speak to them just to give you a sense of a sort of capsulized sort of version of the many projects I've worked on. I've been doing this for over 60 years. And I think you'll see with the excitement in my voice that I love what I do. And that's the first thing. But we'll talk about the two images on the screen now. On the left is a self-portrait of me as a cowboy. When I was a kid growing up, I loved the West. I loved cowboy movies. And I actually did a book called Black Cowboy, Wild Horses. And so I did that portrait because I'm sort of playing cowboys again. On the right is a ship or a freighter. The time period is about 1820, so quite a long time ago. And it's from this image. It's from a book that I just finished. It's in production, and meaning in production means it's being printed. And we won't see a book that's bound that you could purchase for another maybe 6 to 9 months, because that's how long it takes. Next grouping slides. I've done a lot of projects. As I said, I've been doing this for quite some time. And on the left, you see an album cover for a classical composer, Mahler. And I say album cover, and I need to explain that because you guys probably know DVD or CD covers. But this was an album cover, so it was quite large in scale. On the right is one of my all-time favorite, because oftentimes I'll be asked, out of all the images I've created, do I have a favorite? Well, if I do, and often it might be just on the top of the list, and there's so many that I love. But this one on the right is the cover of a book I created with Julius Lester, a collaborator, an author, named the title of the book is The Legend of John Henry. And it's an important painting for a lot of reasons. It was the first time I initiated my own projects, meaning I came up with the idea, and it came from a story that held my imagination when I was very young, The Legend of John Henry. These are two very different kind of projects. One on the left is a book cover for a review magazine. And I'm playing with the idea. I'd like to also use humor in my work. Some of my work is very serious. Other times it can be humorous. In this case, we're talking about a review magazine of books. So we're talking about reading. And I thought, how cool. So we have this giraffe. And you know the patterns in the giraffe, the sort of random patterns. Well, if you look very closely at this image, those patterns, those random patterns, turn into books. So the idea is, and this is important too, because in a sense, we're going to talk a lot about the use of the imagination. And an example would be this image here, where you have spots, the spots on a giraffe turning into a book. So there's a kind of a play there. On the right is from Aesop's Fables. My mother read me those fables when I was a kid, and I just love the idea at going back and sort of reimagining or adapting them. These are two other images. One is a book jacket for a cover called Run with Horses, and it deals with Native Americans in this country. And so So that was an important book because we all have to remember, even where we are standing right now was at one point land that belonged to Native American nations. On the right, and I'm going to share with you because I have a taxidermy pheasant in the studio, and this was drawn from that that taxidermy pheasant. And Mr. Cohen, don't let me go without sharing that with everyone. So what I thought, I think is that it in terms of numbers? We have more
Yeah, I
slides.
think then you talked about some of the ways you got started, and you
Yeah.
wait till you hear what happens after that.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to start this morning with something a little different, and that is I'm going to start with a finished book. You know, it's a poem, and it's from a book titled "I Want to Be." Now, somebody's going to have to keep me on task here. Okay. So here's the way it's supposed to work. I'm going to read from a book that was published quite about 10 years ago. Then we're going to go into talking about what goes into making a book. So the process itself, the author, the collaborator. So we're going to kind of go work backwards, starting with that. And then I'm going to do a quick studio tour, and then we'll work on the image of the owl. Hey, by the way, did we find out whether it was a bald eagle or
Mrs. Baisley actually would be a good one. He was asking about the kinds of eagles. I know you photographed them. Do you know the answer, Mrs. Baisley? The kinds of eagles?
And that are where? By us?
Yeah, or really the mascot itself. What kind of eagle?
Those are bald eagles, yeah.
Bald, good. Okay, we're in good shape. All right. So,
yep.
Good. Now, I love poetry. I do all kinds of books, fiction, nonfiction. But this was a poem that has really stuck with me, and it's actually going to be in an exhibition at the Montclair Art Museum in Montclair, New Jersey. And it's called "I Want to Be" by Thylis Moss. And in this case, I'm working with a poet. So I'm working with a collaborator. And so we never met, by the way. She wrote these poems and sent them to a publisher, and the publisher asked if I would be interested in illustrating. So I'm going to share part of this with you because I just love this poem. And okay, so "I Want to Be" by Thylis Moss, the poet. Today, a lady, a man, another lady, another man, and my friend asked me, what do I want to be? I thought, and I thought. They were tired of waiting. So I said, I'll tell you tomorrow. I walked home slowly. I kicked up rocks and dirt that filled the air like tiny butterflies. I held a handful of river water. Then I let go of it above my head like rain. So you see, with poetry, the poet, the writer, is using her imagination. So listen to the words. I kicked up a patch of sunlight on my arm. I played hopscotch in footprints after I made them. I made a grass mustache, a dandelion beard, and a bird's nest toupee. So I just love this language. And I'll just a couple more. And I double Dutch with strands of rainbow. Can you imagine that? Think about that. I double Dutch with strands of rainbows. Then I fastened the strands to my hair and my toes and became a fiddle that sunbeams played. Then I sang with the oxygen choir. Now I'm going to go to the back of the book because there's some beautiful passages I want to share with you. And it's all about, oh, I love this. I want to be green, but not so green that I can't also be purple. I want to be tall, but not so tall that nothing is above me. Up must still be somewhere with clouds and sky. So you see, not only is the writer using her imagination, but the artist has to use his imagination. Now I want to go back to the last page because I love this. I want to be language, a way to share thoughts. What my grandmother says when she speaks in tongues, that's also music. I want to be my other grandmother's hands when she signs, when she seems to be blessing everything. Here's the part I love so much. I want to be all people I know. Then I want to know more people so I can be them too. Then they can all be me. I want to be a new kind of earthquake, rocking the world as if it's a baby in a cradle. So this book is about all people coming together, right? And this is how the book ends up. I think it's a beautiful ending. I want to be eyes looking everywhere. I want to be ears hearing everything. I want to be hands touching everything. I want to be mouth tasting everything. I want to be heart feeling everything. I want to be life doing everything. That's all. So it's a beautiful, beautiful book. And I think I dedicated this book to my mother because she was so important in my becoming an artist. Now, how does a book get made? I spoke about a collaboration. In this case, I'm collaborating with a poet. We talked about the book image of John Henry. That in that case, I collaborated with an author, Julius Lester. So I've worked with a lot of different authors contributing their stories, and my job would be to illustrate those stories. Now, each story starts with the text first, of course. In most cases, writer writes a story, sells it to a publisher. Publisher asks Jerry Pinkney, is he interested? So I get it in the form of text without any suggestion of ideas for the art itself. That's my job. My job is to read the text, the story, and then interpret it, visually interpret it. So you have a storyteller with words, and then you have a storyteller with art. I'm the artist guy. Anyway, so I have a kind of, every artist has a way of working, and you find your own process, and you will too, by the way. Eventually, when you start to write or whatever you attempt to do, you're going to find that there might be a certain rhythm for you that may be different than other people. In this case, I've developed this way of working where I take the text and I actually literally do what you call thumbnail sketches. Lots of artists do thumbnail sketches, by the way. But what is a thumbnail sketch? It's a small drawing. Thumbnail sketch. So it's a shorthand for the artist to explore possibilities for which parts of the text he's going to illustrate. And by the way, when you guys start writing and illustrating your own stories, you can actually use this. It's fine with me. It's fine with me. So this is my process. And I do lots of these. Sometimes I'll do maybe 2 or 3 of these drawings for exploring one part of the text. And then after that, I decide which of those thumbnail sketches seems to, because it's always changing, seems to work best for this particular project. So I go through the whole book this way. So it in a sense, it becomes like a mini book. Once I make that decision of which illustrations, which thumbnail sketches I really think I want to zero in and use for the final art, the next step is what you call a dummy book. And a dummy book is a model for the book. And it's simply what I do is I decide on the size of the book. Then I have sheets of paper. I cut sheets of paper that are twice that size. And then I fold them in half. And in this case, it's you can do it different ways. I just took a rubber band to hold it together. Now, and so it kind of feels like pages in a real book, except that when I start, it's blank. So then I go back to the thumbnail sketches. I look at those sketches and I say, which ones would be more effective in this book? And then I literally start to draw into that blank dummy book. You'll see here, I actually then take the text that I shared with you that came without visual suggestions, and I literally tack it in place. So when you're finished, it feels just like a book. You know, you can read it and you can read the pictures as well. And it gives me some idea whether everything is working. Because when you're doing a book, it's very important to see what happens when you turn the page. You want to keep everybody interested. So that's the beginning process of book. And then there are working drawings. And I do these drawings, and they're all, I'm going to say something that is very important. Research. Research, research, research. So when, in fact, you're doing all this preliminary drawings, you're also researching, because in order to draw a subject, you got to know it. And so the research is important. We'll get to that as well. So what I'm going to do now is a quick studio tour, because I want to get to the demonstration. So this right behind me is, and I'll spin this around so you can see. This is a painting, my drawing table, and this is where I do my watercolor. So you'll see that watercolor on the table. This is my palettes or palettes. See if I tilt them without everything gone. So you get a sense of how this is watercolor, by the way. Most of my images are pencil and watercolor on paper. So there you see my palette. And you will see my tools. And you talk about reference. Now, reference is also, I just need books for reference and inspiration. And I have lots and lots of libraries and library books. This this bookcase is a number of books that really are about artists, my favorite artists. And so we'll spin this around and I'll share with you another work table. You'll see these are my tools. This is where I keep my brushes, and you'll see they're all kinds of size, square ones, round ones, all different sizes. I never know what will give me the best effect until I'm there. So constantly moving around and exploring possibilities for my work. This is my second work table, and you'll see you'll see lots and lots of plants in the studio. I love plants, and you also see those plants in my work. This is another work table, and this is where I do a drawing. You'll see a drawing there. So this is called a working drawing that you'll see for a book, The Little Mermaid. More plants and things I've collected over the years. And I'll walk you through. This is my writing desk here. This is where I do a lot of writing. I also pay my bills at this desk. And this is my my bike because I have to get plenty of exercise, right? And behind that, you'll see another bookcase. That bookcase, gives you an idea of the importance of research in my work. That library there, a bookcase, and our books all on nature, Mother Nature. That's animals, it's space, it's the oceans. Here, I'm very organized. I didn't talk about it, but I'm dyslexic. I have a learning disability or a learning difference. So I keep everything very organized. This is, by the way, the work and reference for one project. It's a big project. It's my memoir that I'm writing about how I became an artist. And I'll just share with you all the different folders about subjects. Now, I've been working on this for a long, long time, for about 8 years. So this is all of the research and the writing for one project. One project. Okay, I'm afraid of time getting by me, so I'm going to move by here. By the way, I shared with you the book that the poet, the one on nature, where I shared you the dummy book. I'm working with another poet, Nikki Grimes, and this is all on nature. And you see there some of the books that I've laid aside so I can keep them at hand. This is what I call it. It's a drawing bench, and you see I started an eagle there, and I started yesterday, and it was 2 sessions. So the idea is I will work on this in each session, and we'll see it sort of develop. And I also took some pictures so that we'll be able, Mr. Cohen will be able to share with you the beginning stages, which was just a line drawing. So let me see if I can position this so that you can see as I work. And by the way, I can also answer questions as well. So this is you see my reference there. Usually the reference, in this case, with working with photographs, there could be many, many sources. And that's the part where I talked about using your imagination. You have a photograph in front of you, but that is a reference source. That's that's so that you can get the anatomy correct. You can use it also for inspiration, but it's a guide to developing a drawing. So,
and while you're doing that, if anybody has a question, just write it in the chat, and then Mrs. Baisley or I will read the questions, okay?
Good.
I kind of want to show,
Carmine, just put it in the chat, please. Thank you. One of the things I know the teachers had talked about, maybe a little thank you. And Nicholas, you just wrote you like to draw. Mr. Pinkney would love to see your artwork. He's actually encouraged each of the classes to include it, and Mr. Pinkney will see your artwork. How cool is that?
Love that.
Okay. A lot of love to draws in the comments. Anybody want to know something while we have Mr. Pinkney here?
Now, I talked about the sketchbook a lot. You'll hear me because I love sketchbooks. And I also shared with you the making of the dummy book. So when you say, some students will say, I don't have a sketchbook. You can actually make your own sketchbook. You can make your own sketch, even just simply by clipping pages together.
So one of the questions is, did you teach yourself art?
In the very beginning, I discovered that I just loved drawing. And then when I knew that I was not doing as well as my fellow classmates in elementary school, I began to start leaning on, I knew I could draw well. And so I began to use it as a way of actually participating in the classroom which I wasn't doing very well in the very beginning. So I did teach myself to draw then at that point. In other words, I had no instruction, just the love and the passion of making pictures. So I continued to make pictures, and I realized that I was beginning to be better at making pictures. They were likenesses were closer and things like that. And then when I found that I could use my ability, my talent and gift as an artist, I could actually contribute better and more fully in the classroom experience. So and the teachers recognized it, which was beautiful, and I became a class artist. So then when my interest really grew and people took note of that interest, then they made ways for me. For instance, my father got me into a class working in a workshop with an artist as an artist assistant. And then I went to a vocational high school, Dobbins Vocational High School, and I majored in art. And then from there, I got a scholarship to the Philadelphia Museum School of Art, which is now the University of the Arts. So, education was always a part of my, I think, growth as an artist. And so art school was important. And then even after art school, I still would attend certain drawing classes, because one of the things about art is you can always get better. You can always grow, and that's so beautiful.
Thanks, Mr. Pinkney. Somebody talked about like getting stuck in the beginning. How do you start your drawings if you're having a hard time? And then after this one, Mrs. Baisley, if you wouldn't mind doing some of the chat ones that come up, I'm just going to be turning the camera off to help with an issue.
What was that question? That question was,
how do you start your drawings when you get stuck?
Sometimes if I'm really, really stuck, and I can get that way, I will look at other artists that I'd like, and that helps motivate me. There are times when I'm stuck, when I just need to change projects and rethink a drawing and start anew. That's a hard one, because you might have started something and then you get stuck, and to actually say move away from it is very difficult. But sometimes that's a reason, that's a way of getting unstuck. So inspiration, look for something that might inspire you. Take a walk, anything, read a book, read a passage of a book that can get you unstuck.
Those are some great ideas. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we have one question about how long it takes you to complete the illustrations for a book.
A lot of that certainly depends on how challenging it is in terms of the research, but usually I ask for about 6 months to do a book.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's usually that's what I ask for. Sometimes, you know what? I'm going to say sometimes it happens faster. Rarely does it happen faster than that. It usually takes about that amount of time, and sometimes it'll be longer.
Yes, see that, my little children? Sometimes it normally takes 6 months to complete it when you do it the right way. So that's a very involved process. Samantha Nelson, hi Samantha. She would like to know if you know Patricia Polacco.
I have met her at a conference, and we have, of course, you probably know that she and I have a lot in common, and especially that we both we both have dyslexia. Yes. So yes, we met at the conferences.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Thanks for that, Samantha. Okay, let me go down the list here. Hold on.
Yeah, I like questions.
Okay. There's a lot of them here, so I'm trying to sort through. Some people are telling things, some people are questioning. So let's see. So do you paint step by step That was from Mary. So I don't know exactly what she means by that, but maybe the process.
Yeah, she's talking about the process. That's a very good question because it changes up for me. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll start with the most simplest illustration first, or part of the illustration, so that I gain confidence. And then I move to the most difficult passages as I grow in confidence. But that changes. And sometimes if I'm really feeling good about the start and the idea that I want to visualize, I'll start with the most challenging piece. But I have to feel good. So a lot of it depends on how I feel. But that's a very good question.
And boys and girls, that's an interesting point, because I know yesterday in my class, we looked at all of the different awards, and it took a long time to go through all those awards that you've won over the years. And Mr. Pinkney just said, he was talking about his confidence, and sometimes he's not as confident in certain things as in others. So even someone who has won all of those awards for his illustrations, he still has moments where I need a little inspiration. I'm not feeling so confident. So when you're not feeling as confident, you need to do that big fancy P word. What's that called? Who knows? Elizabeth, tell us what that P word is.
What is that P word? I want to know.
Persevere.
Say that.
Yes, he perseveres.
Well, and that's a beautiful thing, because a lot of times, especially if you're inventing something. In other words, what I do, and there are times for you, it doesn't exist until you do it. So if
Exactly.
And so you're creating something, you're inventing something, and that takes a lot out of you, and you have to persevere. You had someone that often is what happens when you make a mistake was similar to that when I get stuck. When I make a mistake, you keep going. And you keep going, and you look at that. If you think it's a mistake at that time, because sometimes it isn't when you get some distance, realize that you can learn from that. You can learn
Absolutely.
from a mistake. And that's, you look at all successful people, somewhere they've had to question themselves or reverse the directions or something like that. And that's just part of how you grow. And it's also why school is so important, because school provides you with the platform where you can explore things, and you can make a mistake, and a teacher can help you out of that.
Yeah. It's so interesting because we've read about a lot of different characters in our stories this year that have persevered. But it's interesting to know that not only the characters have persevered, but the people who drew and created those characters also persevered through the process, right?
Yes, right, exactly. Exactly.
So let's see. Oh, so Elizabeth asked, do you do any, so she said, do you have any other supplies other than watercolors, or is that your main way of creating art?
Yeah, I'm a really what they call watercolors. This drawing, though, this is a drawing, and it's done with pastels. With pastels, it's a chalk.
Okay.
And so it's a stick of chalk. It also comes in like a pencil form, like this.
Okay.
So yeah, so I work with a lot of different materials, but mainly you see in front of you that you have in the library there are watercolor on paper. So that's the medium that you most associate with my artwork.
Right. And we were actually looking at that yesterday online and saying, the lion, for example, had so many different colors, even though he was like generally, tannish, right? All different, anything from like reds to beige and everything in between. So we noticed that too.
Most of my watercolors, it's all layered. And what I like about switching this up and going to chalk is that you can actually blend with your
Yes.
fingers or your hands. So I like that.
Do you guys see what Mr. Pinkney's doing? Actually, if you hover over his picture and you click on the little push pin, it'll make Mr. Pinkney's screen huge, and you'll just be looking at that. So if you want to do that and see his picture more close up, you can do that. So Kaylee is asking how you originally became an illustrator, so an author. How did you decide to use your artwork for illustrating books?
When I went to college, I studied graphic or design. That means just putting elements together. I love to design, and so I that was what I majored in. But I've always had a passion and a real love for drawing and painting, mainly drawing. And so when I came out of college, I accepted an assignment to do. It's my first book, The Adventures of Spider, by Joyce Arkhurst. And I realized in creating a book, I could use both disciplines. I could use what I majored in, which was design, putting elements together. And then you had to do artwork. So I could take those two things that I loved doing, that I could do well, and I could both marry them in a book. So the book became very important to me.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Michael, hi Michael from last year. Michael asked, do your children write books? I know the answer to that one, but I won't answer it.
I was going to do this first, and yesterday I didn't have time, but not only do I have children, I have 4 children, and 2 of those children, they're all in the arts, but 2 of them are involved with picture books. So my son Brian, which you will have books in the library. He works with his wife, Andrea Davis Pinkney. So he's my son,
wow.
and he's a writer as well. So we'll put that there. But
awesome.
This is something you probably don't know. And this is a brand new book, came out last year. And the artist is Charnel Pinkney Barlow, my granddaughter.
Oh, I love it. I did not know that. Oh my goodness.
And she's on about her 4th book right now. So that's
wow.
Yeah, that's pretty special. So they're actually my wife.
That is special.
I need to bring one of her books out too, because my wife Gloria Jean is an author, and we've done 4 projects together. So
wow.
Let's Pinkney's out there.
Yes, exactly. Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
We need more.